So this is certainly one thing that I didn't think we'd be talking about, but we're referring to the Boston Bruins once again, this time in collaboration with the Ottawa Senators, because when it comes to the latest in Boston-Ottawa conversations, there was an article published a few days ago by Bruce Garriock in the Ottawa Citizen that I thought we should take a look at today. Here it is. Garriock, the title reads this: Senators will likely take another run at Boston's Linus Ullmark in the offseason. Okay, so that is a pretty big headline. What are they referring to? Well, they're talking about goaltender for the Boston Bruins, Linus Ullmark, a guy who, at the time of recording this audio, is in a pretty tough spot. I mean, he's making $5 million a year till the end of next season. He's 30 years old. He was one of the best goaltenders we had ever seen statistically last year. He won the Vezina. He was really good. And this season, he kind of declined in terms of his numbers. Now, sure, .915 save percentage and 40 games played isn't bad, but the thing is, when it comes to the Boston Bruins, there's been sort of a commitment shift. You can sense it from the way the Bruins played against Toronto, from the way the Bruins played against Florida. Boston has been rotating between Ullmark and Swayman for the past 2 years or so, and it's been a really good system. But from recent playoff stints where they switched to Jeremy Swayman too late, to the stint this year where Jeremy Swayman started to get consistent starts night in and night out, it's really put the spotlight on Linus Ullmark as a guy with 1 year remaining on his contract, as a guy who could potentially be moved. Because $5 million isn't terribly cheap, and if the Boston Bruins are going to go completely in with Jeremy Swayman, well, then you kind of just don't really need a guy like Ullmark anymore. You could reasonably sustain yourself with a backup goaltender who can play 25 to 30 games a year and just do okay. If Jeremy Swayman is going to be fine, that's all you really need, right? Having to commit to one of these guys will make a lot more sense when you're going with the younger option in Swayman versus Ullmark, who is 30. So with Linus Ullmark trade talk running rampant, this article by Garriock goes out there and talks about the Sens, and how they would like to make a net gain during the offseason. That won't be easy for the club to upgrade its troubled goaltending position, but Steve Staios, the club's president of hockey operations and GM, is studying his options. After failing in a bid to acquire Ullmark from the Bruins in March, Staios and the club's hockey ops department are expected to make another pitch before the draft set for June 28th to 29th in Las Vegas. The article then writes that the Sens, Kings, and Devils were among several teams that made a push for the 30-year-old Ullmark before the deadline. The indications are that Ullmark refused to change his 15-team no-trade list, which meant a possible deal to the Devils was scuttled. Now, pause. With everything in mind that we had just talked about, Linus Ullmark does have trade protection. As it said, 15-team no-trade list, modified no-trade for the final 2 years of his contract. So anywhere he gets traded to, he would have to okay it himself. And if you wanted to talk about the Ottawa Senators, well, they might be one of these teams that very desperately needs a guy like Ullmark to come out here and take over the reins as the number one. This season, if you go over to the Sens and their goaltending situation, nobody was really good. Joonas Korpisalo played 55 games. He had an .890 save percentage. Anton Forsberg, an .890 save percentage. Matt Sogard, an .859 save percentage. These guys were not great. So, with Linus Ullmark being a primary target, the question might be, okay, what's the price? Well, Bruce Garriock's got your back, because if you scroll down in this article, it goes out there and indicates what a league executive said in regards to that price. This league executive said on Thursday that he believes the Senators would likely have to offer defenseman Jakob Chychrun along with a first-round pick and another selection to acquire Ullmark. Even then, he has the hammer because he does have that modified no-trade clause. So, with this in mind, we want to talk about the idea of trade prices, because if it's Jakob Chychrun, a first-round pick, and another draft pick too, that's really going hard for a guy like Linus Ullmark. And I'm not going to say that he's not worth it. Like, he's certainly a talented goalie. I mean, he was literally a Vezina winner last year, best in the league. But the question is whether or not the Sens are desperate enough to get that huge upgrade in goal that they would be willing to trade away all these assets. Now, for Jakob Chychrun, we recognize that he is probably going to be on the move If not, maybe soon, because he's been in this purgatory as well. It's been a very rough go for Jakob Chychrun, but he, for the most part, is still a talented defenseman. I mean, he had 41 points in 82 games played this previous season. What more do you want? Far cry, though, from the 41 points he had in only 56 games 5 years ago. But Chychrun, adding on another draft pick and potentially a second pick as well, it does get a little bit much in my opinion. Especially if that draft pick is like, for example, 7th overall, like what the Ottawa Senators have right now in the 2024 draft. Could you imagine the Boston Bruins getting a huge upgrade to drafting 7th, plus getting a defenseman like Chychrun, plus getting another draft pick, and they're not even technically losing in net? If they commit all that extra money to Swayman, then it's like, okay, fine. We're not really getting worse on paper because Jeremy Swayman is good enough to take over the reins, and he's arguably better than Linus Ullmark at this point, right? So if you wanted to go technically, like I'm just being very dehumanizing here on purpose, but if you wanted to say this is like a scraps for scraps trade, Linus Ullmark, a guy whom the Boston Bruins were already thinking about trading, and Jakob Chychrun, a guy whom the Ottawa Senators were already thinking about trading too, would this not be super beneficial, especially if you're able to round it out and get the value to what both teams would be happy with? I don't know if the Sens would be too happy with trading away that 7th overall pick, but even if it is just like Jakob Chychrun and another, let's say 2nd or 2/3 or whatever for Linus Ullmark, maybe both teams are okay with that. Or maybe because the Bruins have all the leverage, like, hey, we're the team trading away a Vezina caliber goaltender, give us your 7th overall pick. Is that enough of a return in Ullmark to have you acquiesce and say, okay, great, like, let's just do it. Sorry, 7th overall, but Ottawa wants to get competitive now. We want to start winning now. We've got to build with what we have on this team already. Because I did see a lot of fans go out there and bring up whether or not that was appropriate. Sens fans kind of concerned if they're going to overpay for a guy like Ullmark, etc., etc. For what it's worth, though, if you wanted to talk about the likelihoods, the idea of an Ullmark trade was discussed, and Don Sweeney tried to play his cards close to his vest in regards to everything Ullmark. No conversation I'm going to have with a player in terms of what we're trying to do until we have a conversation is really going to go public, Sweeney said. I hope you all respect that, because ultimately that is, as a player, a former player, I would hope would happen. At times, unfortunately, things start to leak out. That's your job. You guys do a hell of a job in figuring those things out and piecing them together. So, no real confirmation, but he is kind of saying, yeah, no, you guys, the media, y'all are getting scoops. Some of them are real, some of them are not. I'll give you props, but still, we're not going to show our cards just yet. So with this idea in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're a Boston Bruins fan, what are your opinions on getting a guy like Jakob Chychrun to add on to your blue line, plus a few extra draft picks in exchange for Linus Ullmark? Do you think your team is getting worse, quote-unquote, with a team like this? Because if you're as confident in Swayman as you is in Ullmark, then it shouldn't really matter, right? You sign a backup who is okay, and then you just continue on. You just get that upgrade on D. That's all you really care about, is it not? And for the Ottawa Senators, because Jakob Chychrun was already in this precarious spot in the first place, would you be willing to trade away him and all those extra picks to get a huge upgrade in net like Linus Ullmark? He is certainly like 3 stratospheres above what you're getting out of Jonas Korpisalo and Mads Sogard and all them. So is this kind of a trade idea something you vibe with? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. The article will also be linked in the description if you want to read that yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99 and bye.